Does every human, no matter their culture, truly have universal rights, or are these rights a construct of Western societies imposed upon the rest of the world? This question has sparked intense debates among scholars and policymakers alike. At the heart of this discussion is the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR, a landmark document that sets forth the fundamental political, economic, and social rights every individual should enjoy. The UDHR was born out of the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust, with a mission to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. But, as with every influential document, the UDHR isn't immune to criticism. Some critics argue that the UDHR is a Western-biased document, imposing Western values onto other cultures. They contend that the Declaration doesn't sufficiently consider the cultural norms and values of non-Western societies. However, it's important to remember that the UDHR wasn't solely crafted by Western minds. Representatives from various countries, including non-Western nations, had a hand in drafting this declaration. The emphasis on individual rights was intended to transcend cultural bias, aiming to resonate with all individuals, regardless of their cultural background. Interestingly, some critics also point out how the UDHR has been manipulated by authoritative leaders in states to violate human rights under the pretense of enforcing tradition. Take Saudi Arabia, for instance, which abstained from endorsing the UDHR, citing conflicts with Islamic faith and teachings. Yet despite the criticisms, many argue that human rights are indeed universal, and that the UDHR, while not perfect, serves a crucial role in protecting these rights. They maintain that the defense of individual rights doesn't undermine the importance of cultural diversity or group rights. After all, culture is not static, it evolves just as our understanding of human rights does. So we're left with this thought-provoking question. Are human rights truly universal, transcending cultural and societal differences? Or do they need to be adjusted for cultural nuances? As we delve deeper into this topic, we hope to shed more light on this complex issue. Let's delve into the argument that human rights transcend cultural differences and should be universally applied. The essence of this argument is that human rights, by their very nature, are designed to protect individuals, irrespective of their cultural background or societal norms. This perspective emphasizes the universality of human rights, asserting that they are not a Western construct, but a global standard that applies to every human being. This viewpoint is embodied in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document drafted by representatives from various corners of the world, including non-Western nations. It asserts that all humans are born free and equal, irrespective of their race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. But how does this universality play out amidst the myriad of cultural norms and values that span our globe? The answer lies in the language of human rights. This language serves as a universal moral vernacular, a common tongue that transcends cultural differences and defends the rights of individuals, especially those oppressed in patriarchal and tribal societies. A salient example of this cultural clash can be observed in the case of Saudi Arabia. The country abstained from endorsing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, citing conflicts with Islamic faith and teachings. This instance underscores the tension between universal human rights and specific cultural norms. Yet proponents of universality argue that this clash does not diminish the importance of human rights. On the contrary, they assert that these rights are compatible with cultural diversity. Every culture, they argue, can pursue its own vision of a good life, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of individuals. This perspective posits that the purpose of human rights is to protect the interests of the powerless, regardless of their cultural context. It is not a matter of imposing Western values, but rather of endorsing a universal standard that safeguards the dignity and freedom of all human beings. While this argument champions the protection of individual rights universally, it faces criticism from those who believe human rights should be context-specific. On the other side of the debate, critics argue that human rights should be tailored to respect cultural norms and values. This perspective emphasizes the importance of cultural context in understanding and implementing human rights. The argument here is that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, while noble in intention, may inadvertently impose Western norms and values on societies with different cultural contexts. This imposition, critics argue, can lead to conflict. Instead, they propose that human rights be adapted to different cultural contexts to foster respect and understanding. Consider the countries where one might expect clashes between Western rights and local traditions. Yet these very nations have endorsed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This suggests that the universality of human rights does not necessarily negate the importance of cultural norms and traditions. Instead, it offers a common ground where diverse cultures can meet, negotiate, and recognize shared values. Take, for instance, the interpretation of Sharia law. Critics of the universal human rights perspective argue that a progressive interpretation of Sharia law can be compatible with universal human rights. This illustrates the possibility of harmonizing cultural norms with universal human rights principles, showing that respect for cultural diversity and the assertion of human rights are not mutually exclusive. However, it's important to remember that this perspective is not without its challenges. The task of adapting human rights to various cultural contexts can be complex and contentious, and it's essential to ensure that the adaptation does not dilute the essence of these rights or become a convenient excuse for their violation. While this argument advocates for cultural diversity and respect, it faces pushback from those who believe in the universality of human rights. The debate between universality and cultural specificity of human rights is ongoing, and perhaps this tension is necessary. It forces us to continually reevaluate our understanding of human rights and strive towards a more nuanced and inclusive interpretation. The debate between universality and cultural diversity in human rights is complex and nuanced. As we've seen, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR, is an ambitious document that aims to transcend cultural differences and uphold the rights of every individual. However, critics argue it's a Western-biased document that imposes Western values on other cultures. But let's not forget, the UDHR was drafted by representatives from various countries, including non-Western nations, with the intent to be relevant to all, regardless of their cultural upbringing. While the UDHR does prioritize individualism, it's important to note that it doesn't diminish the importance of cultural diversity or group rights. It is not a disregard for cultural norms, but rather an attempt to ensure that these norms don't infringe upon individual rights. The emphasis on individual rights is not intended to erase cultural diversity, but to protect individuals within these diverse cultures. Moreover, culture is not static, it evolves over time. As societies change and grow, so do their understanding and interpretation of human rights. This evolution allows for the integration of universal human rights within diverse cultural contexts. The language of human rights is a universal moral vernacular, a common language that validates the claims of the oppressed against injustice, regardless of cultural or societal norms. This language is especially important for protecting the rights of the most vulnerable in all cultures, such as women and children who often bear the brunt of patriarchal and tribal societies. The UDHR has been endorsed by the majority of world states, even those where clashes between Western rights and local traditions might be expected. This shows the potential for a balance between the universality of human rights and respect for cultural diversity. However, the enforcement of human rights remains a challenge. It's dangerous to dismiss their importance based solely on their Western origins. What truly matters is the purpose of human rights and their ability to protect the interests of the powerless in all cultures. Ultimately, the conversation continues as the balance between universal human rights and cultural diversity remains a pivotal question in our global society. Remember to follow the channel and like the video for more content about global politics.